Thank you, thank you. That's why I come down. There's plenty of chairs here. Come on, make yourself comfortable. No? Yes? Anyway, on behalf of my colleagues at McKinsey and also on behalf of your communications team, David, Rich, and Lisa, I really want to thank you for joining me. We're supposed to be here till 6. You have my commitment. We will be out of here on time. I absolutely totally promise you that. Just to be sure that you're all in the right room, can I have a quick show of hands here? How many here, before you were reincarnated as MBA students at a Wharton School, had in fact designed, stood up in front of an audience, and delivered some form of presentation? Quick show of hands. Okay, so most of you have had that experience. That's great. How many here would admit that standing up in front of an audience generates a sense of nervous tension, second only to having open heart surgery? How many are too nervous to raise your hands to admit? So right away we've learned rule number 1 about giving presentations. We get nervous. Let's be clear about that. I've been to the bathroom 3 times. I've had 2 cups of water. Believe me, we get nervous. So let's talk about our nervousness. First thing I'd like us to be clear about, there's nothing wrong with being nervous. Can you appreciate what that nervous tension is all about as a sign of respect for the audience, a sign of respect for the speaker, of wanting to do well? See, I would be more concerned if you weren't, because then it would suggest you don't care. Let it be all right for you to be nervous. By the way, do you want to hear a big joke about you being nervous? You sure? Your audience doesn't care. They don't care. So what I'm going to do today is give you a whole bunch of suggestions for how you can take that nervous tension and put it into the presentation so you do an even better job. That's my purpose. My objective, of course, is going to be for you to implement every single one of my ideas. You got it, right? That would be the height of egotism for me to believe you're going to do that. You're not going to do that, and I'm perfectly ready to accept what is going to happen. I promise you. There's going to be about 10% of my ideas are going to say, gee, that's superb. Thank you. We really appreciate it. And the other extreme, there's going to be another 10% who's going to say, well, I think we don't know what they feed you at McKinsey, but you're crazy. You would never, ever do that. You don't know who I am. You don't know why I am. No! It's okay with me. Don't do that 10%. And to be very honest, I'm not interested in either extreme. Those are going to be very obvious. I'm infinitely more interested with the middle 80% of my suggestions today. Play with them over time. Integrate those ideas that work well. Disregard what doesn't work well. If you do that, I will have met my objective. If you want to take notes, by all means, feel free to do so. On the other hand, Lisa was kind enough to make copies of several handouts that will be waiting for you at the end of the session. So let me describe these and they preempt your need to make notes. The first of these will be a one-pager called Say It with Presentations. It is the structure and the outline for my comments today. But what I'd like it to be from your point of view is the outline of all of the steps you need to go through for every presentation you design. Behind that will be something that introduces the 2 books that David was referring to, Say It with Charts and Say It with Presentation, something written about those. Because of the time constraints, I will refer to but not elaborate on a segment I call Sketching Your Story. Please make sure you read that section. How do you relate the words you're going to speak with the images you show to be sure that you work well together? That'll be here. And similarly, again, because of the time constraints and because of the availability of the books and the notes, I'm just going to touch upon saying it with charts, but again, you're going to get a 4-page summary. Okay? So this should be waiting for you at the end of the session. I have made a commitment to finish at 6 o'clock and absolutely no later. I need a commitment from you. Please don't wait till 5:58 to ask questions. Now, I'm very serious. Questions come up. Ask the questions when they come up. Do not get nervous. Let me worry about making sure we keep living questions. Is that fair? Okay, so with that in mind, let's address the task of putting together a presentation. And as you all know from your experience, on the surface, very simple. All you have to be concerned about are just 3 major phases. Phase number 1, you want to be absolutely sure that you define the situation that's going to make this presentation you're about to give tomorrow different and unique than, say, another presentation you gave last week or one you're going to give next week. The answers to these questions are the answers you need to move to phase 2, which is the actual design of a presentation itself. At which time you're concerned, how do you structure a logical, persuasive arguments? What visuals do you design? How do you make sure the two work well together? And last, of course, what distinguishes a presentation from a written document are the delivery skills. How do you set up your equipment? How do you handle yourself in front of a room? How do you handle interaction? How do you handle questions? So as I said, on the surface, it looks very simple. As you all know from your experience, it isn't that easy. So what I'm going to do is go one level behind each of these 3 phases and elaborate in much more depth as to what's involved in each phase. Starting with defining the situation. Here, what I'm asking you to do, whether you're working individually or as a team, as soon as you know you've done a presentation, do yourself a big favor. Clear your decks, clear your desks, clear your minds, single sheet of paper, and do everything in your power to find the answers to these 5 questions. What in the world is your objective for this presentation that's coming up? Whom are the people you're trying to persuade? Who's your audience? I know that there is nothing more impressive in a business presentation to show the audience that you are in touch with the facts. And what the audience is listening for is the so what of some of these facts, what I'm calling your message. How much time do you have? And as a result, what do you put in, what do you omit? And as Rob was speaking, making sure that you pick out the appropriate media. Please.
Did you mention that every one of these slides are in the handout?
No. What there is, as I said, is the words are here. Certainly there is much more depth on the book, but you're not getting copies of my slides. No. Okay, with that in mind, let me go behind each of these 5, and let me start with this business of defining your objective. Here, what I'm speaking about is for you to ask yourself, why are you giving a presentation? Better yet, what do you hope to accomplish as a result of your presentation? See, right now, do me a favor. In your mind's eyes, make a list of the 5 things in descending order of importance to yourselves, the 5 things you like to do most in life. Okay, we all know what number 1 is. And for many of us, 1 is also numbers 2 through 5. That's okay. You got the list in your mind, right? 5 things you like to do most in life? Okay, now here's the question. Where does giving a presentation fit on that list? So you assume that it is not among your 5 priorities, is that right? 145 maybe, but not the top 5, okay? Here's the insight. As much as you don't like giving presentations, I hate, as a member of your audience, sitting through them worse than you don't like giving them in the first place. I will do anything not to sit through your presentation. I will lie, I will cheat, okay? I'll activate my pager, I'll ask my assistant to come in and disturb, anything. But my point is, therefore, if you want me to sit for your presentation, you had better give me one hell of a damn good reason for me to be there. And that's what I mean by your objective. Can you write out in one sentence only, what realistically you expect from me as a member of your audience? Write that out. Because get this, meeting your objective is the only measure of success you have for your presentation. See, I don't care what a great speaker you are if you don't meet your objective. I don't care how beautiful your vision is. You did not meet your objective. Conversely, if currently you're meeting your objectives, don't change what you're doing. It's working. But you won't know that if you haven't taken the time in one sentence. What realistically do I want this audience to do as a result? Make sure it's action-oriented. Okay? That's what I mean by defining your objective. Equally important, okay? What I'm listening for and looking for on that sheet of paper in front of you is an incredible, in-depth analysis of the members of your audience. You notice I use the word analysis, not just identification, names, titles. But I want to get right into who they are. My mentor, Ken Hamer, the gentleman I dedicated my book to, used to say, designing a presentation without an audience in mind is like writing a love letter and addressing it to whom it may concern. It was like that. You've admitted that you're nervous. I need you to stop worrying about what's happening here and start worrying about what's happening out there. So start making a list. Who are the key decision makers? Who has the authority to say yes or no to what it is you want them to do? How interested are they in your presentation? How knowledgeable are they about what you're presenting? See, all these are clues as to what you're going to put in and what you're going to omit. See, think about this one. If your ideas are so good, if your recommendations are so good, why should the audience say no? See, you'd like to believe that rational people will make rational decisions when presented with facts. You'd like that. That's not the way it always works. Let me give you a personal example. I want you to know that for 33 years, I smoked cigarettes. When I enlisted in the Air Force, way back then, you weren't considered a man if you didn't ride a horse, have a tattoo, and smoke a Marlboro, right? I figured I would do 1 out of 3. I taught myself to smoke. And for the next 33 years, I put cigarettes in my mouth. Now, over that period of time, I was given the equivalent of more presentations to persuade me to stop smoking, all of which were logical, all of which made sense, none of which got me to stop. You take the financial presentation. You guys are wizards, okay, with your spreadsheets, your lowest 1, 2, 3s to show me the net present discounted cash flow of how much it cost me to smoke a pack of cigarettes per day. And you show me right there, look here, dummy, at the end of the year, with the money you saved, you could buy for yourself a gorgeous tennis racket. Makes sense, right? Didn't stop me. You talk about the design of PowerPoint visuals. You haven't lived until you have seen the inside of your lungs animated in black and white on a 20-foot screen for 3,000 people to see how the tar is eating away at your lung tissue. Powerful, right? Didn't stop me. The punitive approach, my doctor, Gene, it's very simple. You keep on smoking, you're going to die. The emotional approach, my 2 daughters, Daddy, we don't want to lose you. That one was that one got me to stop for about 20 minutes. See, it took the sum of all of these presentations. At a time when I was psychologically ready to accept it, and it took me 33 years. So I need you to write these things out. Where is the resistance coming from? What's their attitude going to be? You can never go enough in really, thinking about analyzing in depth the members of your audience. As we said, at the heart of all of this is what I'm calling your message. How do you get in touch with your message? It looks like this. Let's assume your audience said, come on over, team, we're going to give you 4 hours for your presentation. So automatically you design 4 hours worth of visual aids, right? If you're working with transparencies, it's about this many. You walk in with 4 hours worth of transparencies. Go down. You get ready to start. Chairperson looks at you and says, I'm sorry. I know I said 4 hours, but I've got this crisis tennis match with Zelazny. I can only give you 1 minute. After you curse, silently under your breath for 30 seconds, what would you then say in the remaining 30 seconds that summarizes the 4 hours worth of presentation? That's your message. Make it a habit to write that out. And you'll find it invaluable to be sure, if you get nothing else across to your audience, your message will stand out. In terms of the scope, just because your audience gave you 4 hours doesn't mean you have to use the full 4 hours. Let me tell you something. No audience ever complained if you finished early. On the other hand, if you don't have enough time, rethink through your message, your objective to that audience, so it is realistic to the time constraints you've got. And here, as Rob was pointing out, don't fall in love with any one piece of equipment. Analyze the pros and the cons of each piece, of equipment you're going to use. I will grant, by the way, Rob and Lisa, that many of the disadvantages of this era of PowerPoint, you made that very, very clear, and I acknowledge that. What I find very often, at least at McKinsey, if we get too fancy with the animations, the audience, the clients are sitting there and saying, how much did it cost us to put this presentation together? It can in fact fun. You do all of these flying, stop being so gimmicky. So needless to say, as Rob Buckley, I keep it simple. Okay? Another disadvantage, and I think Lisa was mentioning that, all of a sudden you become more aware of the visuals on the screen than of the speaker. In other words, it puts more focus there, and I want my audience to be clear, hey, it's the speaker who's the presentation. Those are truly aids in the sense that I meant that. By the way, do you notice what I've been doing with this? You notice I've been taking on and off the projector. Why is that? You got it. It's to overcome exactly what Lisa was speaking about, is to be sure that you're focusing on me and not on the visual. And for that, I've done it now. As you know, on your laptop, if you want to simulate that, if you press the period, it'll give you your blank screen. As a matter of fact, I've got a white piece of tape here, so that even in a darkened room, bingo, I know what that is. Okay, so learn to use that, to be sure that the attention, when it should be up there, is back to you. Now, there is one or two awesome advantages to PowerPoint presentations. Did anybody mention them? What is the single biggest advantage to PowerPoint presentations? It is the ability it gives me to make on-the-spot changes to my visuals. That's big. See, here I am giving a presentation predicated on interest rates going up at 4%. The audience client says, yeah, but what if it's 6%? Boy, am I glad you asked. Let's find out what happens. Ta, 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 ta. Bingo, the chart comes up. That's big. That shows flexibility. See, and it's something I could never do as well with other pieces of equipment. Also, as much as I love the overhead transparency because I can change the sequence, as you know, you can also change the sequence of your slides here, right? All you need to do is enter the slide number on the new number sign, press enter, and you'll go right to that slide. So for that reason, what I do with these usually is I give myself 6 pages of my visual, 6 up on a page. I'll make that corner number very big, so that if somebody needs me to move to slide 33 or 24, yeah, I can see it. I press 24, enter, bingo, I go right to that slide. Okay? So it's very flexible. But what I'm asking you to do as well was, be sure you think about the pros and the cons for each situation you're facing. So as I said, that's phase number 1, and all I'm looking, is that one sheet of paper with all of these answers so that the members of the team know how this situation is unique. By the way, I've done this as a puzzle only to suggest these things are interrelated, and I don't care about the sequence in which you find the answers. I do care that you do all of these, because you need all of these to move to the other phase, which is the actual defining, designing the presentation itself. Here again, 3 major steps. Step number 1, you want to be sure that you structure your story, the persuasive arguments. Once you've done that, then you want to sketch what I'm calling your storyboard. And then last, you actually create your charts and graphs or visual aids in support of the story you're telling. In terms of structuring the story, you notice I'm even suggesting start with the body, because these will be influenced by what you put into the body of your presentation. Now it comes time to structure your story. What I have experienced more often than not, our tendency is to recreate the problem-solving approach we use to find the solution. I cannot tell you the number of presentations I walk in where the speakers start, good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, 6 months ago you asked us to do such and such. Okay? Let us take the first 3 hours in a chapter called Background and Introduction to tell you all of the things we had done in those 6 months. On and on and on and on. As a member of your audience, I want you to do me a real big favor, 90% of the time. I want you to turn these things upside down. Tell me where you are, and then spend the 3 hours showing me how you got there. Let me demonstrate what I mean with a few exhibits. The first of these is going to demonstrate the problem-solving approach. You are now captive members of the audience, so get in touch with what's going to happen in your mind as you try to figure out where I'm leading you to with this story. So, 6 months ago, you asked us to do a lot of work researching your organization. This is the first awesome piece of evidence we came in touch with as we looked at your organization. Let me describe this in excruciating detail. It is a piece of metal which measures 17.5 inches and has two bands about 1.5 inches, 3/8 of an inch in diameter. It's made up out of kryptonite. Incredible piece of evidence we came in touch with. Oh, you want more? Oh, we did a lot of work, I'm sorry. We found bolts, and we found springs, and we found nuts, and we found... See, and I'm going to take you like that for 3 hours, and finally, in the last 2 minutes, I'm going to show you what I'm talking about, and you're going to go, oh, why did you take so long? Notice how infinitely more effective it would have been if I had started my presentation. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, my objective today is to persuade you to buy this bicycle. Let me now spend the next 2 hours and 58 minutes telling you why. Efficiency, effectiveness, cost, quality, yummy, yummy, and all that stuff. Let me also, by the way, point out the kickstand. A piece of metal without which the bike falls down. Can you see how now you have a context in which to hold that piece of evidence, rather than wondering, where the heck am I thinking? Let me give you another example of the same thing. This is a Dear Shirley letter. So for a few seconds, you're all Shirleys. You are about to receive this letter from your all-time dearest friend. Get in touch again. What's happening in your mind as you try to figure out what your dearest friend is trying to tell you? See, I can see by the way you're responding how long it's taking you to start laughing once you get what's happened. You know, and the latter is simply recreating the sequence of events and the sequence they occur. Now notice how infinitely more effective this letter would be if it were turned upside down. It would get to the point much faster, it would be simpler to tell, it would have a hell of a lot more impact. Okay, so as I said, 90% of the time I beg you, turn your stories upside down. I left you a 10% margin. Why?
Well, I guess sometimes description of what you've done adds a lot of credibility to what you're going to talk about.
I appreciate that, so that's one of the reasons why you might choose to stay with the way you have. Any other reasons you could think of? Yes?
Or you may want to build up the anticipation for your conclusion.
A bit more of a mystery story, thank you. You've analyzed your audience. I'm listening for something else.
If your audience is likely to disagree with what you're going to say.
Bingo. See, if you've got a hostile audience and they may disagree with what you're going to say, you're building up a hell of a lot of resistance. Now, let's take that situation. Let me try something. Okay. Let's assume this is a situation. Listen to what I'm about to say. You tell me how you feel. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to make a recommendation to you today that we know is not going to be popular. We really know that. I want you to know that the members of the team have sat down and discussed and looked at all of the options, and believe us, if we felt there was any option, and we'll show these to you, we would not be making this recommendation to you. Our recommendation is that you should invest in that bicycle. Let us tell you why. How would you feel if I did that? Can you appreciate at least I've shown some empathy? And even then, you might still be receptive if I created that. But nonetheless, I still will give you your 10% if you analyze the situation in which you do a much more, inductive approach. So you've done now a good body. Let's talk about introductions. Can I assume now that all of you have flown the nation's airlines? You've all been on planes? Is that fair? What do you do in the first few minutes of an airplane flight when a flight attendant reads you the safety features of the plane? What do you do? Right. You go unconscious, you read the newspaper, nobody pays attention. Right? That's the introduction to the airplane, and nobody pays attention. And I maintain that's what happens in most of your presentations. Now, what would happen if you heard the flight attendant say the following on the sound system? Ladies and gentlemen, if you look out through the right window, you will notice a fire developing in engine number 4. Do I have your attention now? Yeah, that's what happens with presentations. And you're all creative people, so I don't have any, firm answers, but find some way to light a fire under your audience in the first few minutes so that you get their attention from all the other things that are on their mind. In terms of content, I follow what I call PIP, P-I-P approach. The first P is make it very, very clear to your audience what the heck the purpose of this presentation is all about. Why they? What's important is the I. Purpose, importance, and then the other P is for preview. Give you a bird's eye view of what you're going to do the time we're together. My preview of the 3 phases of the presentation. It's like a roadmap, so you know where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. And then similarly in terms of your ending, think very, very carefully about your ending. Make sure you repeat your recommendation, spell out the pros and the cons, okay? And then I need 2 more things. Give me your action program. Okay? In other words, make me feel, if you say yes to buying a bicycle, you've already anticipated what it's going to take to turn that into reality. Here are the steps. Here are the people who are responsible. Here's how much time. Here's the cost. All you have to do is say yes. We are ready to proceed tomorrow morning. The last item on the list is what I call next steps. What agreements did you make during the presentation that you did not know was going to come up before the presentation? Write these out throughout the presentation and then spell these out to your audience so you develop long-term relationships. Yes.
Could you reiterate those 4 again?
Yes. Spell out your recommendations one more time. Okay. Repeat the conclusions that led to those recommendations. Then I want action program, and the last thing I want are next steps. Did that answer your question? Thank you. Again, jump in with your questions when they come up. Okay, so you now have a great storyline, okay? From there, you're going to go to sketching your storyboard, and as I mentioned before, because of the time constraint, I'm not going to elaborate. It will be in the handout you'll get, and of course, if you get the book, it'll elaborate that much more. For now, let me move on to producing your charts, your graphs, and all of that stuff. David almost mentioned how many years I've been with McKinsey. Okay, so I'm going to let you in on a secret, but promise you won't let it out of this room. Do I have your promise? I'm getting very embarrassed at this one. And October 2nd will be exactly 40 years. Wow, scary stuff. I mean, if there's one way I say, I do what I like and I like what I do, so it might help me tremendously. But the point is that my responsibility is not just the training, but it's to work with my colleagues in designing their presentations. Now, if I work with you, I will make it a point at the end of the presentation to come back to you and get some feedback. How did it go? Did you meet your objective? How did the audience respond? See, I have never learned my lesson in the 40 years, because anytime I ask you, how did the presentation go, what's the only answer you give? Always great. And no matter what, great! So I kind of visualize in my mind's eyes, you know, a typical member of your audience sitting there for your presentation and feeling great. Great. However, what I think you're not telling me is the way the audience feels. And generally, the reason they feel that way has to do with the design of your charts and your graphs. Have you seen these lately? Exhibit number 1. Everything you ever wanted to know, and at no time will my fingers leave my hands, aren't you impressed? Now, I'll ask you, what are you trying to show? The obvious answer will be, well, we're only interested in the grand total. So I want to show you we did the homework and they add up this way and that way. Right. Now, on occasion, I'll be able to persuade you there's another way. Gene, you're a pro, you know, you wrote the book. Anything you can do to turn this table into an exhibit, please do so. Only one caveat. Do not omit any of the data. That's when I become very resourceful and design a chart that's much more to the point. Oops. Thank you. It's a real chart. I did not make up this chart. I hope you're laughing. I really hope you're laughing. See, the question I have here at this stage is how much time did it take my visual aids person and at what cost to create this chart? And was it worth the investment given the point it was making? Now, if that doesn't help to confuse your audience, there's other tricks of the trade, right? So you figure if people don't understand your chart, work on the title to the chart. At least let them understand that, right? Take a look at this one. Is that a great title? Productive selling time as a percentage of total time related to travel time between calls and length of individual call. Are there any questions? God, I hope it's a real chart. Yeah, I didn't know that. Also, in the annals of designing visuals, there's another rule. The rule states, the simpler you make the chart, what happens? Tell me. The simpler the chart, what happens? Easier to understand, right? Anything else? Focus again on the presenter. Good, thank you. Yeah, but that's, yes, please.
It's memorable.
Memorable, thank you. Now, that's what we'd like to believe, but that's not the way we apply the rule. See, we're incredibly ingenious. The way we do it is the simpler we make the chart, the more footnotes we put on the bottom of the chart to balance out the simplicity of the chart. Okay, we wind up with things like this. We're so evil, aren't we, right? And then, of course, what you need in every presentation is the one chart which is commonly referred to as the, oh my God, chart. Every presentation must have one, oh my, this is the one that summarizes the 6 months worth of effort. If it's a 3-hour presentation, 3 hours all in one chart. You ready for this one? You ready? Ta-da! Hold on. It is too easy to laugh at my colleagues' charts. So I want to make this again an object lesson. Let me show it to you again. As captive members of this audience, get in touch with what's happening in your mind as you try to understand and figure out the chart. Let this be a lesson. If this is what you're feeling right now, this is what you're going to be doing to your audience, if this is what you do with them. See, I wish you could see yourself on my vantage point watching the chart. See, there's a sea of confusion out there, and all of your eyes are going around. Pretty soon you got tired of that, and you said, title, help me, please. So you read the title, major cost categories. You said, so much for that, right? So you went back around. But give yourself credit. You spotted the 4 companies mentioned in the title, right? You spotted that. Now, what are these done? I mean, what are these things? Cost categories. See, that's great. You're making great progress, right? Now, I'm going to save you another 73 years, right? Because all of a sudden, your eyes are going to pick up these data. Aha, little ray of sunshine. That's the scale. You know, the horizontal lines on most charts, very resourcefully made it to concentric circle so you can get more information on it. Isn't that ingenious? Wow. So I think we now know how to read the chart, right? Let's take company G, fixed manufacturing as a % of net sales. Company G. 10.2%, right? You got that? Okay, hold on to it. Company S is 9.8%. Company F is about 7.3%. Company K is about 5%. Isn't that ingenious? Now all you have to do is do the same thing for all the other dots. And you notice nothing stands in the way of genius. Did you get this? You notice how the scale only goes up to 14%? But there's a 19.4, that's why you got empty space. You got 30s and 40s, you don't mess with those, you just make anything with it. You now know how to read the chart. So what? So what? See, the purpose is not to understand how to read the chart, so what the heck is your point? So again, I'll come back to you and ask you, how did the audience respond? Wrong question. Gene, the audience loves this chart. They have dubbed this the radar chart. They have asked us for big posters they can hang in their office. And I don't doubt it because they have to do something with their time. You're bad, you're bad, you're bad. I have designed a handout which I call McKinsey's Wall of Shame. And I put all these ugly exhibits in there. So if you get that one, send it to me, okay, so I can add. But the interesting thing, I was trying to design a companion piece called McKinsey's Wall of Fame. I can only find 4 exhibits. Pretty bad. Anyway, so if that's not the way to do it, the question is how do you do it? And very, very quickly, 1, you make sure to get the right chart. Well, this will be in the handout again because I want to go on to page 3. 2, you write a message title. And 3, you use a graphic treatment. Very, very quickly, in terms of selecting the chart form, you will see a matrix in the handout that shows you the basic kinds of charts, that explains the basic kinds of comparisons that come from your message, and that gives you my recommendations for which chart to show which kind of recommendation. Step number 2, writing a message title. This is what I see at the top of most of the charts, which I would call a topical title. You looking at this, tell me what obviously is the point I'm trying to make with this chart. You tell me. Yeah, take a look at this. The West accounts for almost 50% of the profits. Now, I want you to know that it's a very valid observation. It's a very good conclusion. Can you also appreciate it is not the point that I, as a designer or a presenter, want you to focus on? Miscommunication. See, I am infinitely more interested if you pay attention to the North, where we've got less than a 10% share. So most of you are thinking West. I need you to think North. I've got miscommunication. How do I overcome that? I take responsibility for my message, and I let the message be the title of my chart. Can you appreciate now there's much less room for misunderstanding? That's what I'm looking at. And then the third point I wanted to make, using a graphic treatment, a line, a color, a shading to pull the attention of your eyes to what's important. So for instance, again, play the game with me. Sales growth, what's my message with this chart? You tell me. Okay, sales have increased. How much have they increased? Did somebody say a lot? You're going to go into a board of directors, sales have increased a lot? Give me a break. How much have they increased?
2 times.
Why are you having trouble?
Oh, scale.
Hold on, time out. Scales do not change relationships. If something has double, it's double where it's eggs, pounds, dollars, cents, right? All the scale does is identify the nature of the data and the magnitude, but it doesn't change for relationship. But, okay, somebody is in this audience. Identify who you are. There's always somebody in this audience. Somebody here with an engineering background is thinking, is the last name USOB, you put this on semi-logarithmic paper. Right? There's always, you gotta know it, right? So, let me tell you what's happening. No, this is not semi-log paper. And yes, this starts at 0. And can you appreciate we are now 2 minutes into a discussion that has absolutely nothing to do with the point I'm trying to make with this chart. See, it's not that sales have increased. My message that over the course of the year, there's been 2 brief periods of decline, here and here. Miscommunication. How do I overcome that? I take responsibility for my point of view. I use my message title and a graphic treatment, in this case the 2 yellow, to pull the attention of your eyes to what's important on this page. So that's what I meant, by saying it with charts. Any questions on that for now? Okay, so with that in mind, therefore, let me address the third of these, the actual delivery skills. And what I've talked to you about is setting the tone, talking about the skills themselves. I'll demonstrate what I mean by working with visual aids. We'll finish off with how many questions, albeit there's a previous step, which is setting up the facility. Incredibly important, ladies and gentlemen. Can you see how much visual space I've allocated to this universe for setting up the facilities? Because I really mean it. You've admitted to being nervous. I I need you to get into that room as far ahead of time as you can, 40 minutes, and set it up the way you want it to be set up. See, I know there's a lot of technical experts who know a lot about the equipment, but they've never delivered your presentation. And get in there and have it done the way you want it to be. We got away pretty lucky in this room, because what I find in most conference rooms, the people who have designed the rooms put very bright lights directly over the screen, and you can't cut them off, and it washes out the images on the screen. When I used to overhead projectors, I used to find that overhead projectors only get cleaned when I came into the room. Okay? So I need you to get into that, where you're going to put your notes, where you're going to put your equipment, where you're going to put your watch, but get comfortable so that you can remove that from the nervous tension that comes up in giving presentations. In terms of setting the tone, what your audience is looking for and listening for, and you as a speaker, has three parts: confidence, conviction, enthusiasm. Confidence. They want to feel like you know your material. That if any question comes up, you will have an answer, including the confidence to say, I don't know, when you don't have an answer. I beg you, you don't have an answer, don't make one up. It'll be very obvious to your audience, and it will undermine everything you put in that presentation. Put it this way: if you're not confident in your own presentation, don't expect your audience to be confident either. And what's going to happen, they'll ask you thousands of nitpicking questions. The sole purpose is to find out, do you even know what the hell you're talking about? Conviction. I need you to believe in what you're speaking about. If you were sitting there in the seat of the decision makers, you would act on your own recommendations. Be clear, if you don't believe in it, it's going to show through again. Okay? And why should you expect your audience to believe it? And enthusiasm. I promise you, you will never ever bore your audience into accepting your recommendations. Let me tell you, it takes one hell of a lot of energy. I am going to feel it on my ride back home tonight. And I want you to know, as many times as I've done this, I am giving you tonight every bit as much energy as I might have done yesterday as I will tomorrow, because I owe you no less. You owe your audiences no less. And it's those three things working together: confidence, conviction, energy. In terms of the skills that you have available with which to do that, well, the words you use, the way you use your voice, and the way you use your body and hands and your gestures. In terms of the words you use, I beg you, speak to your audience the way you normally speak. Now, I'm very serious about that. Many of us, we write our presentations out, and when we speak, we start to sound like a written memo. Incredible. I mean, the image that comes up for me would be if you were to order breakfast in the morning, from the waiter, this is the way you would sound. Good morning, sir. The purpose of my presence here this morning is to obtain breakfast. I will require the following three items: A, toast; B, eggs; B1, soft boiled. You start to talk that way. See, I'm very clear. One of the biggest concerns we have in front of an audience is the fear of making a mistake. Big one. Big one. I don't know, does anybody ever read Krishnamurti's work, The Indian Guru? In one of his books, he makes an observation that floored the crap out of me. I thought it was so magnificent. He asks the question, when your feelings get hurt, you made a mistake in front of an audience, when your feelings get hurt, what gets hurt? See, it isn't like getting a tooth pulled. You get a tooth pulled, pain! And yet, for many of us, we would rather have a tooth pulled than the embarrassment that comes from making a mistake in front of an audience. Incredible. Let me make you a promise. I promise you, you are going to make mistakes in front of your audience. See, you're a human being, so that by definition, you're not perfect to begin with. Let it be all right to make mistakes. I genuinely want you to know that your audience isn't sitting there with a scorecard counting the mistakes you're making. As a matter of fact, you want me to really hurt your feelings? You sure? The audience doesn't even care that it's you presenting today. You could be one of 100 other people. All they care is how those recommendations are going to get them out of that lost situation. So let it be all right. You will just talk more, you know, these mistakes and all. Absolutely okay. In terms of the way you use your voice, yes. You know, expand the range. This is where these workshops that you're conducting, you know, to be sure that you're comfortable in the range in which you speak. You know, from here, make sure that you reach the people sitting all the way in the back. In terms of your visual skills, what do you do with your hands, your body, and your gestures? Then tell me. If I could give you guidelines, here's what I would hear myself say. I want you to stand with your weight evenly distributed on both feet. This is to avoid, you know, this constant rocking back and forth that I see so often. Feet comfortably apart, right, of course, facing your audience. You may want to imperceptibly be on your toes, a little bit of a bounce, and bend your knees ever so slightly so you don't stop the blood from getting to your heart. Comfortable? Good. Now that was the easy part, right? The question is, what do you do with these dumplings? I can tell you what you cannot do. You cannot put them behind your back. Very defensive. You can't put them in your pocket. Sloppy, too far. You cannot put them on your waist. Very daring and aggressive. You cannot cross your arms. You cannot point. You cannot pick your nose. What do you do with these dumplings? And about the only advice I can give you is, yes, I do like the idea of a weight more often than not, evenly distributed. Okay? But if you make home base, your arms are about waist high, bent as I have them right now. So you make a very good impression on your audience, and that's home base from which, trust yourself, just move your arms to follow whatever you're saying as you're saying. Was lose your consciousness about your arms. Think about what you're saying, you'll find automatically your gestures will support what you're doing. On the other hand, there is one skill I really, really, really need you to work on. It's what I know you've heard called eye contact. This is a way throughout the presentation of psychologically shaking hands with different members of the audience, so that at some stage or other, everyone feels that you're having a personal, one-on-one conversation with each other. That skill you work on. See, your audience is always talking to you, if not with words, with body language. When they agree, you see the small nod of the head, and then you move on. Uh-oh, they disagree, let me use some backup visual. Uh-oh, I notice a frown, let me elaborate. See, you won't know how your presentation went if you never looked at your audience. I'll ask you at the end of a presentation, how did it go? You say, I don't know. You never saw your audience. Eye contact. Work on that one skill. That is very, very important. In terms of doing something with your body, your hands, and your gestures, it is called what you see here, called working with your visual aids. And I think, yes? I have absolutely no problems. Let's listen, there's two questions. In terms of you having notes to refer to, no problems. As a member of your audience, what I get is you want to be sure you're not forgetting anything important. I do have a problem, however, if your notes become more important than anything else because you haven't had a chance to rehearse, so you don't know what the hell you're talking about, and so you're focused with eye contact on your notes rather than that bubble. When you need to refer to your notes, yeah, pick up your notes. Look at them, be quiet. Put them down, and now speak to your audience. Can I see your question? Again, any other questions? Keep on jumping in. I was talking about working with visual aids, and here what I was meaning, and you see me do this, instead of standing here where you're blocking part of the view of the image of your audience, when you show any visual, turn around, be quiet, and go to the screen. Turn your body at about a 90-degree angle so you don't lose the eye contact with your audience. And then with your hands, point on the screen as to what you're referring to as you refer to it. That gives you something very constructive to do with your body, your arms, and your gestures. Also, from the audience's point of view, that's something, where should I look at? Look at the word visual. Look at the vertical line. Look at the word facilities. Take a look on this chart. You see the vertical scale, you see the horizontal scale. You see the dashed line, that's your competitor. Take a look at where you are. Look at the gap between the two. Back here, give me your so what, give me your transition, show the next visual, back up to the screen, work with your visual aids. It'll give you something very constructive to do with your body, your arm. Okay, so with that in mind, let me at this stage close off with handling questions. I sometimes get concerned about leaving that for last, because if we're really honest, that's the source of nervous tension. It's the fear of questions. Not so much the fear of questions, it's the fear of not having answers for the questions, right? Do you ever hear yourself say this to your audience? Ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to ask any questions at any time. Do you ever hear yourself say that? No, you feel like bullshit, you don't mean that. Are you really clear? Right? What you really mean is, please ask only those questions for which we have brilliant answers when we ask you to ask them. That's really what you mean. What is the single most often heard answer to any question that's asked? Okay, what's the second most often heard answer to any question that's asked? Yeah, you said that's a good question. That's a second most often heard answer to any question. Yeah, I'll get back to that later. Thank you. That's a good question. I'll get back to that later. I'll get back to that later. I'll come back to that later. Just give me a few minutes. I'll touch that later. Would you please stop interrupting me with your dumb questions? I'll get to those when I'm damn good and ready. That's what you're saying. That's in fact what you're implying. Anytime you say to your audience, I'll get to that later, it suggests that what you have to say is more important than what they need to understand to proceed. Shut up, I'll get to that when I'm damn good and ready. It's a psychological shut up. And you're going to find 12,000 reasons for why I should be justified, and I will not allow one of those to breathe. The audience asks the question, answer the question. Answer the question now. About the only latitude I will give you is if I hear you say, let me give you the short answer now, the longer answer will follow, and if that's okay with the person asking the question. See, forget a presentation. Yes, sir.
There's always some guy that wants to go off on some tangent away from what you think the rest of the audience wants to say. What do you do with that person?
Answer the question. Keep it brief. Break eye contact, move on to something else. But don't put that person up. To that person doesn't think it's out of bounds. Answer the question. Brief, break eye contact. Where was I? Answer the questions. I was thinking of what I forgot. Okay, let me keep on going at this thing. The process for handling questions looks like this. Someone asks a question. Rule number 1. Shut up and listen to the question. See, your mind goes crazy. Somebody asks a question, your mind is going, do I have an answer? Don't I have an answer? Do I have an answer? Goody, goody, I've got an answer. And you feel so good, you rush out with the answer before the question has been finished. Wait. Aside from just being good courtesy, very often in the process of asking the question, the individual finds his or her own answer. Sometimes someone else will handle it for you as a member of the audience. More often than not, the first comments are not really the question, it's the setup of the real question that's coming up. So develop what one of my colleagues calls the courage to be quiet. One of the chapters in my book reads, listen to the silence. Develop the courage, just be there and listen. If it's a multiple part question, and you're working with a team, do me a favor, write down all the parts to the question in case I don't answer all the parts. I want to be sure. We're going to cover everything. After the question has been asked, rule number 2, pause. Think about your answer. Make the person feel the question was important enough that you needed time to think about the answer. As against, you didn't get me, I got an answer, I got an answer, I got it. Pause. Think about your answer, then answer the question. In answering the question, answer only the question that's been asked. No more and no less. Avoid the attitude that suggests you didn't get me this time, you SOB. Not only do I have answers for that question, I got answers for questions you haven't even asked yet. You're tight for time, you're going to run out of things, you're opening up the floor to too many. Just answer the question. Also, in answering the question, assume everyone in your audience is equally interested in the answer. So let's assume that you have asked me a question. Now, I'm giving you an answer. You and I have pretty good eye contact, so we're going to have a damn good time for the next 20 minutes, right? But what's happening to everybody else in the audience? You got it? I cannot afford to let you psychologically escape. So I will pull the question from the individual and answer it with eye contact on everyone in the audience. Now, let me give you a dirty trick, and if you quote me, I will deny, ever having said it. If you want to minimize getting a follow-up question from the same person, finish the answer someplace else. Because you get back to that person, you're going to get hit. Although in your heart, answer the question. That's where your presentations are made. Stop thinking about presentations at an audience. Think of communicating with the audience. That's what I'm looking for. Also, this is a team effort. Team, if I did not do a good job of answering the questions, be diplomatic, be sensitive, attended, jump in. If I did not answer all of the questions that were asked, jump in. Get that our first responsibility is not to me, it is to the members of the audience. As a result, what you may want to do very often in your rehearsal is anticipate all of the questions that may come up, including the 3 toughest questions you may get on the meanest SOB in your audience, so that you can either preempt them or anticipate your answers before you get into the session. Any questions about questions? Please.
What if you're doing a no go? You don't understand.
Admit it. I appreciate the question. I generally do not have an answer. Team, can you help me? No? Can anyone in the room answer the question? No? I promise I will look at it and I'll come up with an answer after the presentation, and I'll be in touch with you as quickly as I can once I have an answer. The other part to your question, what if you don't understand it? Be honest. And I appreciate it. Forgive me. I just simply do not understand the question. Would you mind rephrasing it to be sure I understand? Admit what's happening. Don't run away. Please.
Do you actually rephrase the question after it was asked?
Be careful. When you said rephrase, that's different than repeat. Rephrase means changing the way the question was asked. If I am going to change the words, I will ask permission. You follow me? I appreciate the question. I can't quite answer it that way. Is it all right with you if I answer it this way? In terms of repeating the question, which is a separate issue, the answer is if you don't have to repeat the question. The only reason to repeat the question if you're not sure everyone in the room has heard it. Otherwise, I would rather you pause, listen to the silence, think about your answer, answer the question. Yes? I got it. Thank you. Is there a question behind what you just said? No, I'm serious. Your point is well taken. Now, somebody says, I don't like that. That's not a question. Don't answer it as though it were a question. Acknowledge, I got that you don't like that. Let's talk about it. Get the anger out of your system. Stop making yourselves right and wrong. Just be there and handle it on an even keel. Yeah, let's talk about it. What specifically don't you like? And we talk about it. Yeah. Any other questions about questions? Okay, so you can see it hasn't been that simple, right? Therefore, let me give you 5 next steps that I promise will totally transform the quality of your presentation. You may want to write these down. Sorry. Let me go back one second. Anyway, I was at this that will transform the quality of your presentation. Sorry. You're taking your life in your hands if you think you can do all of this without some form of rehearsal. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Rehearsal number one is perhaps you by yourself, not sitting off the edge of your bed, not watching a football game, but getting up in front of a room that simulates the room, maybe having a tape recorder, preparing your notes, getting familiar, talking it out loud and listening to yourself. Rehearsal number two is in front of 3 or 4 colleagues, no more. Now, colleagues, I'm going to beg you. Tomorrow is the presentation. This is not the time to undermine my confidence. So please be very sensitive to what you're going to say. Be very constructive. Let me know what you find and how to link for problems you've identified. Be very objective, be very realistic. And last, if you have availability of video equipment, deliver it so that you can see yourself in the audience is fine. At McKinsey, I've introduced quite a few video workshops. One of your first workshops will be 2.5 days with 8 to 10 other colleagues, literally watching yourself or when you come across it. Remember, you define the situation. One sentence objective, in-depth analysis of audience, 30-second message, how much time, what's the media you're going to pick. Behind that, you design your presentation, you structure your storyline, storyboard, you design your exhibits, rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Deliver the presentation towards the only goal you have, which is making accomplishment. That is the only measure of success at the end of the presentation. Be sure you get closure to make sure that you met your objective. Otherwise, get into a discussion with your audience of what is it going to take for us to get your approval to buy the bus. Okay, I said I'd be finished on time. One of the biggest secrets I have, by the way, is to always ask for more time than I need and finish early. The audience loves that. We still have 10 minutes. I'll share the difference with you. There are a few very hot questions, and then we surface them now. Please. What I find myself doing is I will get into the room early before anybody is there. I will write down and speak out loud the first 10 sentences to my presentation. So I hear my sound of my voice.